Then beyond that, of course, food storage, starting out by just doubling up on the staple foods that you buy on a regular basis, things like pasta, wheat, rice, beans, honey, things that store for a long period of time. And then beyond that, moving on to longer term storage foods. Some of those, if they're vacuum packed, freeze-dried foods, they can have up to a 30-year shelf life. They're fairly expensive, though, compared to just bulk foods. Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, of course, first aid and advanced medical equipment, communications equipment, and firearms. Lots and lots of ammo in particular is crucial.
Yeah, I'm going to share a story with you. I've got a couple friends who they say when some of their other friends come over and say, "Why do you have so many guns?" They say, "Well, I have a gun for you, and I have a gun for him, and I have a gun for this guy down the street because you guys don't have any." And, they're prepared. I'm prepared, not nearly as much as I should be. I think you could always do a little bit more to get prepared, and especially as you see, the writing on the wall that something bad could very well happen in the next, couple of years, next 3 or 4 years. I mean, we are kind of walking this fine line with the technology, with, the electrical grid. I mean, the sun could knock everything out. You never know. It might not even be a government or a terrorist that gets us. It could just be the sun decides it wants to shoot out a few flares and knocks everything out. And then, where are you going to be?
That's right. Well, you touched on something that's pretty important, and that is having extra on hand for charity. Charity is one of the themes that runs through all of my writings. And if you're going to go overboard in any area, you can't go too far wrong with extra food, extra fuel, and extra ammunition. Because if you missed out on stocking up on anything, if you overlooked anything, you can make up for that with barter. And there's nothing quite like common caliber ammunition as the ultimate barter item.
All right. Most
families only have a few hundred rounds of ammunition at most on hand. They're suddenly going to want several thousand rounds. Mm-hmm. Feel safe. So if you have extra common caliber ammunition, you're going to be in the catbird seat in terms of barter.
And a little tidbit out there, I believe 9mm is the most common handgun ammunition. Is that correct?
It is now globally, yes. Although one thing I recommend is that people do some research and find out what caliber their local police department and their local sheriff's department uses. And even if you don't own a gun chambered in those calibers, stock up a few hundred rounds of those, because you want to have lots of folks on your side. Nothing better than being able to either have barter or charity ammunition on hand.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, tell everyone about your blog.
Well, Survival Blog has been around since August of 2005. We got our start providentially just a month before Hurricane Katrina. And it's grown by leaps and bounds. It's basically doubled each year for the first 4 years it was in existence, and it started to plateau now. But we now have a huge number of visits each week. We have a very loyal readership. It's primarily readers in the U.S. and Canada, and then to a lesser extent other English-speaking countries, and then a smattering globally. We have about 300,000 unique visits per week. We've in total had almost 40 million unique visitors since 2005. And the beauty of Survival Blog is that it's all free. All of the archives are available for people to roam through at will. It's fully searchable by topic. You can type in a keyword in our search box and bring up whatever topic you'd like. There's over 15,000 archived articles, letters, and quotes that people can delve into. And I recommend that people make hard copies of the most crucial articles because, of course, in a grid down situation, you're not going to have access to the internet. And then as a backup, we also have an archive CD that's available at very low cost. I recommend people get that as well. That gives you all of the archives of Survival Blog on a CD, or you can put it on a memory stick to have that available.
I have been printing stuff out for years just because you never know. Lots of practical stuff, how to, make your own fishing snares and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's nothing beats a hard copy for for long-term.
And you can always burn it if you need to.
Yeah, to keep warm, God forbid.
Yeah. You know, you've traveled across the country. You've interviewed people. You've been on speaking engagements. How many people across the country do you think are in that preparedness state of mind? I mean, we got shows on the cable networks now talking about people who are getting prepared and stuff like that. So it's kind of entering the vernacular a little bit. But what's your?
It is entering the national psyche, but in terms of real, practical, tangible preparedness, there's a lot more people interested in preparedness than those who've actually gotten off their tail and done anything about it. I'd say in terms of people that are actually tangibly preparing, I'd say it's only about 2% of the population, which is kind of pitiful, but it's better than nothing. And each person that gets prepared represents one less person who's going to be rushing into the grocery store at the 11th hour and cleaning out the shelves. So everyone who stocks up now is part of the solution, not part of the problem.
That's true. Are you looking at any timetables in particular? Are you seeing anything that's telling you something might be coming up? What do you have on your radar?
Well, right now, my most immediate concern is Greece and the Greek debt situation spiraling out of control. But beyond that, it's really hard to put a date on anything. You know, back in the late 1990s, we had the firm date of Y2K to look at. The only vague date that we can look at right now would be the next peak in the solar cycle. The sunspot cycle is supposed to peak in about 5 years because it's an 11-year cycle. And if we have a severe cycle, then there's a chance of a major Carrington event style solar flare that could happen within the next 5 years. Beyond that, though, I don't like to put a date on anything because I think it's presumptuous. And it also is short-sighted because if you either try to put a date on something or name a particular scenario, you're boxing yourself in. It's better to prepare for every possible event so that you don't get blindsided. It would be very embarrassing to prepare just for an economic collapse and then get nuked.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're building a home shelter, it should be more than just a storm shelter. It should be more than just a walk-in vault. It should also be a combination blast and fallout shelter. I'm one of those all of the above kind of guys.
Well, that sounds like good advice. And people can learn more about that on survivalblog.com, I take it.
Correct, yes, and it's all available free, as I mentioned. Mm-hmm. I do have some books in print, and they're nice, handy references, and they're a great thing to put in someone's hands to get them motivated. But I'm basically a man on a mission. My goal is not to sell books. My goal is to get America prepared.
Right, and that's where we all need to be. I was an Eagle Scout, and that's our motto: be prepared. You know, and that's what you have to start with. And I just recently returned from a ski trip, and we got off the plane. One of my buddies didn't have his straps for his snowboard. Well, I pulled out the bungee cords because I always carry bungee cords. And you know, it all starts with the mindset. And then you got to go into the action phase. Jim Rawls, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, we'll have you back on soon, and I'm sure you have a lot to talk about. So I'm sure Alex may even have you in guest hosting one day. So.
Well, sure, I'd be happy to.
That'd
Thank
be
you.
Great. All right, there he goes. There's Jim Rawls. Here's the book, Survivors. I read it. It's a combination fiction novel with a lot of practical tips involved of things you can do today to get in that mindset so you are a survivor, so you're not somebody left out in the cold when it happens. Before we leave, we got the daily quote. And this is from the book, chapter, I think this is, I forget what chapter, I think it's chapter 5 of Survivors. And it's from John Adams. The government turns every contingency into an excuse for enhancing power in itself. And that is from Survivors. You can pick it up at Infowars.com. I recommend you get it. It's a great book. I read it in about 2 weeks, off and on, and it's got a lot of great tips. So there you go. Don't be left out in the cold. Start preparing today. I'm preparing. Reading that article earlier today about the Trinity. The Trinity speakers say U.S. must share sacrifice. That really started putting a timetable at least in my head. Before I was just kind of planning for general events, but now I am looking at actual, an actual timetable that we have to start looking at. Because if we don't change our ways, if it's all about increasing taxes and increasing the debt and not doing anything about that, and the economy's not going to grow, therefore there's not going to be any change in where we're going. And when the chips fall, the bankers are going to be there picking stuff up, pretending like they didn't know it was going to happen. So that's our show. If you're watching this on YouTube, please consider becoming a member at prisonplanet.tv or at infowarsnews.com. And we do this 5 days a week. Every night we're bringing you the news that we think is important, not the fluff about who's talking about who or who's doing what to who. I mean, we're looking at real issues here. And join us in this crusade to wake people up. Let's get people prepared out there. Let's not sit around and pretend we didn't hear it, we don't know anything, and then when it finally happens, we're going to wish we've done something. We're going to wish we've bought that, some storable food, got some silver, got some firearms, learned how to use the firearms properly. I mean, it's one thing to get a handgun. It's another thing to know how to clean it, take it apart, load it under duress, and fire and hit your target. So with that, I'm Rob Dew. This is InfoWars Nightly News. I'd like to thank Paul Joseph Watson for doing the news portion. And we'll be back here next week. Alex will be out on the road. He's got 2 speaking engagements, one in Dallas and one in Orlando, the next 2 Sundays coming up. So we'll have a variety of guests anchoring the InfoWars Nightly News. I'll be one of them, Aaron Dykes. We're going to get McBreen back in here, and possibly even John Bound, who you've heard his voice on a few projects, but I think we're going to get him in here, sit him down, reading the news under the lights of the InfoWars studios. That's all for now. I'm Rob Dew. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out prisonplanet.tv.